All right, welcome to episode 209 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, practical living, and as of late, it seems like we're even talking about the paranormal. So just hang in there, folks. I am super excited about our guest tonight. And as you can probably tell in the show description, you already know what's going to happen. So I'll handle all of the housekeeping up front. This episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from twooldcrowshomestead.com. Turn that simp into a pimp. Bam! Heaven's Harvest, 10% off with promo code PERMA. You can also get 10% off on those Peaceful Valley seeds that we endorse. It's what we use in all of our food forests and our orchards. So remember, promo code PERMA. And if you want to tip a pimp, you can do it over there on the Fountain app where you can pay us in a derivation of Bitcoin called sats or satoshis. Whatever it is, it's some derivation of Bitcoin that to this day I do not know how to use, but a lot of you people are apparently paying me in this. So one day, hopefully, I can figure out how to actually access it. And then, of course, finally, well, not finally, but close to finally, Redemption Shield, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Folks, you know I am a big fan of grounding. And in fact, as we speak right now, my feet are on one of those grounding mats from Redemption Shield. And finally, can't forget EMP Shield, y'all. In fact, they are going to have some really big announcements coming up in the future. Remember, I'm a 27. Before I got into this whole thing, and well, while I was doing this whole thing, my 27 years as a journeyman IBEW journeyman electrician, I spent a lot of time installing transient voltage surge suppressors all over the United States of amnesia. And I'm here to tell you the very best, without a doubt, is the MP Shield. That's why they didn't reach out to me. I reached out to them just like I did with Redemption Shield. So $50 off with promo code PERMA. Folks, that's all the housekeeping I'm going to do. And I want to keep it to that because I don't want annoying um, disruptions as I'm going through this interview. But folks, if anybody knows anything about me and you know my story, there's not been another person in the history of my 209 broadcasts in this place, not to mention all of my radio broadcasts in the terrestrial world. You know that there's probably not another person on this world that I've spoken about more than Joel Salatin. In fact, my wife and I credit him with our ability to retire as early as we did. And when I say retire, folks, I don't mean it in the typical way. To get out of the rat race where I'm out there playing, yeah, I made good money in what I did, but I was out there playing hide and seek for $3 grand a week. And just like everybody else, you know, you're just doing this job, but inwardly, all I wanted to do was farm. And so I did it part-time, then I did it full-time, but I did it. And the idea was we used education as a leverage to start. And then it was from that education we built on it. And then a little bit more, we'll get into more of that as we go on. But y'all, without further ado, I am going to bring on the man himself, Joel Salatin, if I can actually get this thing to work. Joel, are you with me?
I sure am, Billy. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's honestly surreal for me because in 209 broadcasts, I couldn't figure out the one thing. I didn't want to waste my time with you. And I'm thinking, okay, what of all the things I would love to talk to Joel about on this podcast, I was just searching and searching and searching. I couldn't ever like really pin it down until recently when I just saw you at a local event. Well, when I say local, about 3 hours away from me. And you were in there doing what you do so well. And of course, I'm trying to do what I do, maybe not so well. And we were talking about a number of things, and not the least of which was education. But before we get into that, Joel, why don't you tell everybody a little bit of your background? Because we have a bunch of new people. As you know, you've written the book clearly on the homesteading tsunami. So we got a lot of people into this space that don't yet know about you. So why don't we start with your superhero origin story?
I'm really blessed to stand on the shoulders of excellence in my family and great, gurus that I've read after and been friends with throughout the years. So in 1961, our family moved here. I was just 4 years old, and here to the Virginia Shenandoah Valley. We bought the cheapest, most gullied, worn out, eroded rock pile in the whole area, and and started farming. And Dad, initially he wanted to farm full time, and he asked all these professional, both public and private consultants, how do I make a living on this farm? And everybody said, well, you got to buy fertilizer, plow, plant corn, borrow money for silos, graze the woods, and all this stuff. And my grandfather, his dad, had been a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine when it came out in 1945. And so Dad had this wonderful, ecological background. And as an accountant, as an economist, he was a accountant, a money guy. Never rich, but he was a great pencil pusher, and he viewed the chemical approach to farming as a drug addiction. You're on this treadmill, and you got to just stay one step ahead of the you know of the adaptation that nature makes to your chemicals, and it takes more and more to get the same kick. It gets more and more expensive. And so he had this philosophy, and so we basically put the farm on hold for about 20 years. And he was a fantastic experimenter, and essentially found or developed the platforms that we use today. Portable infrastructure rather than stationary, moving the animals around all the time rather than just dumping them in a field and leaving them there. Direct marketing, where we have a brand and own the product to the final customer. Fertility through carbon, composting and carbon. Multi-speciation, not single speciation. These were foundational elements and ideas as we went through this first 20 years of experimenting and things like that. I came back to the farm, so I always wanted to farm, and I came back then full time September 24, 1982, and essentially built on Dad's platform. Nobody had been here full time for the first 20 years of of when we were here. And then when I came back full time with that platform, with my wife Teresa, then we were able to build on that 20 years of experiments, and a lot of confidence that came with both failed and successful experiments. And we were able to build on that. And today, here we are, whatever it is, 40, 45, 50 years later, here we are with generating 22 full-time salaries. We service some 10,000 families. We run about 1,000 head of cattle, 800 hogs, 4,000 laying hens, 20,000 broilers, 1,500 turkeys, some lambs, some ducks for eggs, and we have a sawmill, so we sell lumber and firewood and things. So it's a it's a multi-generational, multi-species, full-time gig, and it's been very, very exciting to see the land and those ditches. We planted trees. We those rock fields, the soil grew up over the rocks, and we don't have those rocks anymore. And the gullies are all vegetated if they're not filled in. And it went from the armpit of the community to arguably the one of the stars.
That's what I'm talking about. And because I want to focus this more on the education part of it. What sort of education along the way? Because so many people who are just becoming aware of you and the work you've done, they don't know where to start in terms of their education. So let's just get a little bit of background in terms of yours and what you considered important for farm education.
Well, the most important education, I would say two things. The most important education you can get is experience. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. You can read about riding a bicycle forever, but until you actually get on a bicycle and try to pedal it, and try to stay on it, you're never going to get it. So you can read about moving cows or growing tomatoes or building a compost pile, or having an earthworm or a worm bed. You can read about this forever, but until you actually do it and do it small, do it as a prototype, but do it experimentally and small, you won't actually learn anything. So I would say number one, experience. That's why I'm such a big believer in just starting and explain to people it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start and let that starting inertia carry you on to the next step, incrementalism. So that's number one, experience. Number two is well, in my growing up, it was reading. I mean, this bookshelf behind me is full of 1940s, 50s, and 60s. The icons of the movement. Lady Eve Balfour, Sir Albert Howard, Ed Faulkner, Louis Bromfield, Charles Walters, C.J. Finzau. I mean, these are names that well, I mean, and then you've got the more recent ones, Wendell and people like that. But I consider these my vicarious mentors. Many of them I didn't meet, some of them I did, but most of them I've met through the written word. Allan Savory, all of these folks. Bill Mollison, permaculture. I never met him. I've met Dave Holmgren a couple of times, the co-founder of permaculture, but I never met Bill Mollison. Anyway, I think you start with just starting in and do something, even if it's the wrong thing, and then you augment yourself with information, and that information can come from books. Today, of course, a lot of it can come from YouTube's, podcasts, and goodness gracious, seminars and friendships with people that are doing it. I'm a big believer in the Dave Ramsey proximate principle. If you want to do something, get as close as you can to the person or the project that you want to do, and it'll just kind of come by osmosis, because you've put yourself in the way. You've put yourself in the place where you can learn and thrive.
I couldn't agree more. When it was, being a person who was essentially raised in this matrix where I was basically spoon-fed what I was supposed to believe. Well, it led me down some weird rabbit holes: the military education, trade education, college education, and a farm education. And of all those modalities of learning, the only one that's ever put any money in my pocket it wasn't the college education, a little bit in the military, but believe me, they give you $100 and take back 99. Two different apprenticeships, one in the butcher's trade and one in the electrical trade. That is where I made my living, and
Yes.
to a certain extent still make my living. But it goes right back to what you said. It was the most effective modality, without a doubt, was the apprenticeship model, at least for me.
Yes.
But you speak to something else that I think is a profound value. um Man, I could go in so many different ways with this, but you talked about podcasts and as a means to learn something. I think a podcast is very useful, is less important for what we say than for what it makes you do after we're done talking.
Right.
And in so many ways, I'm hoping people kind of take the ball and run with what we're about to discuss today. Now, folks, all of the people that have been with me through episode one, you know how many times I've talked about all the money that we put in, even when we had 3 people and 3 dogs living in 300 square feet for years. We still somehow, some way, managed to buy everything we need in terms of education. Books, as many as you wanted. Podcasts didn't exist in those days.
Right.
And instead of sending our son, who had a full ride academic scholarship, off to college, we sent him off to Australia to work under Jeff Lawton for a long time. And then he came, yeah, not in the penal sense, but actually he was working on that farm. So we're big believers. I mean, big, 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 big believers
Yes.
Of definitely finding education anywhere you can find it. And we recently found out that you have a thing through Stockman Grass Farmer, which, by the way, folks, I am floored at how many people have never heard of the publication Stockman Grass Farmer. If you don't have a subscription, it is very inexpensive, and it is one of the best learning modalities you're ever going to find out there in print, at least in my opinion. And it comes out, and it's awesome. I mean, we got a stack of them down there in our library as well. Well, Joel, you got we have a lot of festivals going on these days,
Mhm.
and they're becoming rather ubiquitous. But you have one that, in my opinion, is basically the who's who of rock stars in this community.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go because I have to stay here. But Michelle has got a ticket because she was the first one to notice it, went and bought the ticket, and is going to be going to be on the first thing smoking up to Polyface to engage in this. I mean, Joel, why don't you give us a rundown of what you have going on up there, because there's always something. but you
Yeah.
got some serious rock stars going here.
Oh, we do, we do. So the Stockman Grass Farmer magazine, for those who aren't familiar with it, is the world's leading trade publication in grass farming. So this is pastured livestock. If you want to pasture chickens, if you want to pasture cows, if you want to have a grass-fed milk cow, it's how to handle pasture. And as you know, in the world, there are way more acres devoted to grasses and forages than there are to crops. So this is the world's leading trade publication, Stockman Grass Farmer. So every other year, we have a gathering, an educational summit, and most recently we've been doing here at Polyface because we have a nice, big learning center called the Lunatic Learning Center because I'm the lunatic farmer, and we can feed everybody. You get barbecued pork, barbecued chicken. I mean, it's worth coming just for the food. But the previous two that we've had, we had kind of our columnists and our favorite writers in the Stockman Grass Farmer, and I'm always thinking, well, how can we make this different? And so I decided this year, hey, let's not have people who write for the magazine. Let's go to our cousins. Let's go to our cousins out here that are in our movement. They don't write for Stockman Grass Farmer very much, but all of our people know them, follow them, and these are the people. These are the iconic people that I would pay to go here. They're my mentors. They're the people that people always ask me, well, who fires you up? Who do you learn from? Well, these are the people that I learn from. So here's what we've got. We've got Darren Dougherty, who is the Australian founder of Regrarians. He is undoubtedly, undisputably, the world's leading landscape, especially water designer. If you want to figure out how to actually design your landscape so it'll work, Darren is the guy, and so he'll be here. Next, we have Dan Kittredge. Dan Kittredge is the founder of the Bionutrient Food Association. If you're unfamiliar with the Bionutrient Food Association, that is a group that is dedicated to bringing nutrient density back to food. So anybody that's got their ear to the ground in this space, I'm sure, Billy, your listeners are way up on this, knows how nutrient deficient our food is becoming with chemical fertilizers and everything else, not to mention toxins and all that. And so Dan Kittredge started this outfit 10, 15 years ago, dedicated to how do we bring back Aboriginal, if you will, truly native Aboriginal nutrient density in our foods. And it has led him to eventually develop a spectrometer. Now, if you watch NCIS at all, Abby has her mass spec. She calls it mass spec. She puts a speck of paint in there, and it spits out the chemical formula, and then she goes down and finds who sells that kind of paint and who bought it last week. And next thing you know, they've got the bad guy because of the spectrometer. And so what Dan and his team are doing is their plan is to develop a spectrometer that's basically something the size of a cell phone that you can hold in your hand like a wand, and it will read the relative nutrient density of different kinds of foods. And they've already done carrots, and they found that the worst carrot in the store compared to the best carrot, you'd have to eat 150 of the worst ones to get the nutrition of the best one. That's how much difference there is in carrots. They found the same thing in broccoli, same thing. Well, they decided to turn their attention onto beef. And so the first one they're trying to get the full, comprehensive layout in is beef. And they're using the University of Utah is doing their data work. They're sending samples of beef from all over the country in there and trying to figure out, what's the high, what's the low, and what's the commonality among the stuff they're measuring 150 nutrients. What makes the best, what makes the worst? And the most common denominator they've found in making the best beef is how many different kinds of plants did the cow eat?
How about that?
That's the single most common, determinant of that. And so he's going to be talking about. I mean, this is cutting edge research. It's the cutting edge science now in this space of, and of course, Darren can tell you, well, how do you get diversity, in your pasture? So we link those up. Next, we have Michael Godfrey. Now, Michael Godfrey is probably one of the top, probably five, if not the top ornithologist in the country. You say, well, where do you got a bird guy talking at a grass farming? Well, because the only way you can have grassland birds and grassland wildlife ecosystems is with cattle. And so he's been doing research on grazing and mowing hay, timing, and things like that to facilitate, to encourage pollinators, grassland birds, and the wildlife of the ecosystem, knowing that how the pollinators and the ecosystem goes, how the bird life goes, is a great litmus test on the overall functionality and health of a grassland ecosystem. And he's got a wonderful voice, wonderful bass voice, and he's just fantastic. So he'll be wonderful. John Kempf. John Kempf, who founded and operates Advancing Eco Ag. That's his business. He is probably the United States foremost agronomist. And he's old order Amish, he's horse and buggy, but he's the only guy I've met that has more books in his house than I do. And the amazing thing is he's read them all. and he can talk as easily about soil food web a la Elaine Ingham, along with quantum physics. The guy is just unbelievable, and he runs an agronomy service. So if you want to know, well, what does this weed mean? If I want that grass, what do I need to do to get that kind of grass? Those sorts of things. He's the guy. Fantastic, and just a wonderful speaker. Then Kit Farrow Cattle Company. So Kit Farrow is the largest seed stock producer in maybe the whole world, certainly in the United States. He sells upwards of 3,000 bulls a summer. He rents land in over 9 states from 200 landlords, runs 5,000 or 6,000 head of cattle on controlled grazing, all grass based, no grain. The guy is an entrepreneurial guru and just a fantastic speaker. His little publication that comes once a month to me, it's a little 2-page thing. I guess he sends it to me because he likes me or something. But anyway, it's just chock full of wisdom and information. So he's going to talk about let's see, where is he? He's let me look at the title of his talk. Ranching more ranching more profitable, BULL, enjoyable, and sustainable. So you got 3 bulls there. Profitable, enjoyable, and sustainable. He's a wordsmith, one storyteller par excellence. Wonderful guy. And finally, to round it out, we've got Ty Lopez coming. So your younger listeners may know Ty Lopez as I call him the ultimate millennial entrepreneurial guru, and he's coming, and I've got him talking about, his title is The Anatomy of a Maverick. So Billy, you know that when you farm like you do, like we do, you're a maverick. You don't fit into the conventional narrative. And so we want to encourage people to be mavericks. We want to encourage ourselves to be mavericks. And so he's going to break down the anatomy of a maverick to explain to us what it takes to be one, how to encourage one, and how to embrace being one so you can be a successful entrepreneur maverick. So that's the lineup. This is a world-class lineup of folks. I'm giving them a lot of time to talk. They have 90 minutes to 120 minutes
Oh,
time
cool.
for question and answer. It's a 2-day event, lots of downtime in between. You'll be able to eat with them, pick their brains, share with them, and it's just going to be a fantastic time.
Well, unless I can find somebody that can look after things, which is unlikely with all the moving parts we have going right now, I won't be able to go. But almost, well, no doubt about it, Michelle is going to be there. And look, folks, how many times have I discussed that you need to get loose or get lost when it comes to doing this kind of work right now? You have record numbers of people getting into this space right now, and I'm seeing record numbers of problems that are 100% avoidable from, I mean, just simple things that could be easily corrected, but so many people are reluctant. You're willing to go out there and spend thousands and thousands of bucks on a tractor you may not need, but you're not allocating any money out there for your education. And I got to be honest with you, folks, this is one of the biggest problems I've seen in this space. My son does permaculture consulting, as many of you know out there. And the number one problem we see are people that get this land, go out there, put a bunch of cattle on it, pigs, sheep, chickens, whatever, because they're either afraid of what's happening, a la the status quo right now, or there is this ready, fire, aim mentality. And
Right.
folks, this is an unbelievable opportunity. When I saw who was speaking at this thing, I'm thinking there is no way on earth they're not charging. I mean, for the cost of this thing, I have paid as much to see just, I'm not going to go into any details right now, but I've spent as much on just to see one of these people here.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
That's astonishing to me because I'm like, I have never seen more bang for your buck in anything that I've ever seen before. And sadly, hopefully you're not gonna, not throw her out because she might film a couple of things here. So if that's going to be okay, or I don't, is this thing going to have an electronic availability for people that can't go?
Yeah,
Or
it is being videoed. So at some later date, it'll be available on video through Stockman Grass Farmer. Yeah, yeah, it certainly will be. But as you know, Billy, you and I we do numerous conferences and homestead events and different things like that. And there's just nothing like face to face. I mean,
no,
just the fellowship and the camaraderie to be with your tribe and do that. So this is August 22 and 23. So it's plenty far enough away to make your plans. And again, you're going to eat polyface food, so that's cool. And so, if you want to call Stockman Grass and sign up, it's 601-853-7755. That's 601-853-7755. Or, of course, you can email Stockman Grass Farmer at sgfsample@aol.com. But if you just Google Stockman Grass Farmer, it'll pop right up. Or you can go to our website, Polyface Farms. It'll give you a link to it. And sure, there's some selfishness in promoting it. And thank you, Billy, for giving me this access to your folks to promote it. But really, I'm sure you and I, our hearts are not into this to whatever, make it break even for Stockman Grass Farmer. What we really believe, I mean, I'm not kidding, we really believe this is a lineup of people that you're just never going to see them at one place at one time on the planet. These people have never been in the same room at the same time, let alone for 2 days. And so you're going to have real access. There won't be more than a couple hundred, maybe 300 people at this thing, so it's not that big. It's not a huge thing. And so there'll be a lot of chance to to commiserate with folks and bring your specific issue to folks who really have an answer.
That's the beautiful part of having a gathering like that. Well, especially being at Polyface. For all of you folks that are saying, "Man, I really want to see Polyface. I really want to see Polyface." Well, you can make it a party with a purpose. You can go
Yeah.
there, make sure you say hi to Michelle. She's going to be there, and honestly, these people are going to be in arm's reach. These are, I'll put it this, Joel, there was such a sense of urgency in this house. As soon as it popped up, Michelle's like, okay, this thing's going to sell out tomorrow. Are you going to go or am I going to go? And I'm like, well, you kind of noticed it first, so I guess you're going to be the one going. And it was just like that. When she saw the lineup here, I was absolutely floored because, as I read, folks, I want to kind of, we'll circle back to this, but I also want to highly encourage you, as I have many, many times before. Look, this is probably the fastest growing farm podcast on the planet right now. And I know it's not just farm, it's permaculture, preparedness, practical living, and all that other good jazz too. And hopefully we add a few other things in there that spice it up a little bit more. But folks, you would be absolutely remiss. If you have any desire, I don't care where you fall on the continuum,
Right.
and where you are on this, you need to get a subscription to Stockman Grass Farmer. I'll give you a prime example why. It was years ago. We were farming in Texas at the time, and we had autumn olive everywhere. And
Mm.
lo and behold, I'm like, okay, man, what am I going to do with this stuff? Well, I found out because I read Stockman Grass Farmer that I didn't have an autumn olive problem. I had a lack of sheep problem because
Ah.
it was an article by Greg Judy that was in there that time. And then
Mhm.
further back when Allan Nation was still there,
Right.
I remember there was an article about how I was doing the pigs at the time. And Allan wrote this story, it was more of a historical expose of how
Mm.
pigs were used in the South prior to the Civil War.
Right.
And it gave me such incredible notions about what could be done in places where people told me it wasn't possible. So folks, I want to highly encourage you, get Stockman Grass Farmer. It's really not that expensive. It's not expensive at all, because you're going to find out about things like this. So, Joel, your mentor, Allan,
Right.
I mean, you told some incredible stories. I remember picking you up at an airport one time, and you were telling me some just unbelievable stories about Allan, and it was really, really something else. I mean, you've been involved with Stockman Grass Farmer for a long, long time, and you're the editor. But
Yeah.
what what brought it to your attention, and what is some of the most helpful things that you found out of that publication?
Yeah, yeah. So I was here on the farm full time, and I had a friend who was wanting to buy a bull here locally, and he asked me to go with him to help him look at this, breeding stock and to help him decide to buy a bull. So I said, sure, I'll go with you. So I rode over with him. This was in, I don't know, maybe 1980, I don't know, 86, 87, something like that. And so I rode over with him. We looked at the bulls, and then he and the farm manager went into the back room, to talk business. And so I cooled my heels out, out in the front foyer, and they had a magazine rack there. This was a a high classy stud farm deal, and farm office and magazine rack and all that stuff. I don't expect most farmers to have a magazine rack and office. Anyway, so I'm looking and I see this, this Stockman Grass Farmer. I pick it up. I mean, I didn't read 2 minutes. I said, "This is me. This is what we do." And I grabbed a sheet of paper off the desk there and wrote down the address and stuff. Immediately sent in a subscription and started getting it. Well, at that time, the the most amazing story about Stockman Grass Farmer, Allan Nation, was a young journalist, and he was selling advertising for television and doing some journalism stuff, uh, both print and video. This is in the 1960s, and his dad always told him, he said, "Allan, you should have your own business by the time you're 30." And so he's through college, he's getting older, and he's 27, 28, and he's working with a TV outfit, and he notices one day, he notices a magazine for sale called the Stockman. The Stockman magazine is for sale. He got to looking at it, and by that time he kind of had his own office because he was kind of a freelancer selling advertising, and his there were like 5 suites there of young professionals that shared a secretary and a receptionist. And so his suite mate, one of the guys next door, was a buddy of his. He was a CPA accountant, and he was Sonny, and he went over to Sonny's desk and he said, "Hey, Sonny, I see, you want to buy a magazine?" And Sonny looks at it, and so they go down and they do their, look at the financials and all this stuff, and man, it's a good deal. So on his 30th birthday, he bought the magazine, the Stockman. And it was essentially a trade publication that just took press releases from all sorts of breeds, the Herefords and the Angus and the Simmental and the Shorthorns, and they'd put pictures of the winning animal at this show and that show, and it was all just about publicizing and everybody patting each other on the back, about how good they were. All right. So he buys this thing, and come to find out, that it was owned after they closed, after they bought it. Turned out it was owned by a senator, a Mississippi senator, who used it to launder money. So if you went to the senator and you wanted a bill, he'd say, "Well, buy that in my magazine, and I'll get this bill in for you." Well, he was ready to retire, so he put the magazine up for sale. And the day they closed on it, the very next day, he held a press conference, said he was retiring, and suddenly they had no advertisers, because the only reason that he had the magazine was to launder money. So they bought a complete shell. All right. And so what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And, the bills are piling up and they're still printing, and, they're not getting any ads. What am I going to do? And he went on a trip and he overheard a guy in a line, 2 guys talking, and the guy said, "What do you do?" And the guy was from New Zealand. He said, "I'm a grass farmer." And Allan's ears perked up. And what, grass farmer? What's that? He said, "Well, we farm grass." And so Allan got the guy's number from New Zealand. He flies over to New Zealand, spends 2 weeks over in New Zealand, sees what they're doing with grass-based agriculture. He comes back, changes the name of the magazine to the Stockman Grass Farmer, relaunches it as the world leading trade. He literally built the grass finished industry in the US, literally built it from the ground up. And so anyway, so then shortly after this, I pick up the magazine. I said, "This is me." So, I wrote a couple letters to the editor from, things that I saw written in it. Well, then I got elected president of the Virginia Biological Farmers Association. And so this is like 1980, whatever, 88, 89, and or maybe even 87. Anyway, and what we have in Virginia, whoever's president of the organization hosts the annual meeting at their farm. So I was president, so I host the annual meeting. You have, maybe 70, 80 people there. And so they come. Well, one of Allan's columnists that wrote for the Stockman Grass Farmer from up in Pennsylvania, Roger Wentling, he was an NRCS technician, and he from Somerset County, Pennsylvania. He literally converted that whole dairy region into grass-based dairy. And he, I don't know how he found out about this little shindig we were having, but he came down. I didn't know him from Adam. Well, he went back home and he wrote this glowing article about us for the Stockman Grass Farmer, and Allan just was all over it. Next thing I know, the phone rings. Allan calls me. He says, "Where have you been, boy? I've been looking all over the country for you. You're what I've been looking for. Can I come up and visit?" Well, I said, "Sure." So he comes up on a train. Now, Allan loved trains. I mean, he was a train-aholic. In fact, in his lifetime, he rode every single steam excursion train in the world. Wow. In the world. I mean, Russia, Peru, Ecuador, I mean, everywhere in the world. If there was a functional steam train, Uruguay, Paraguay, I mean, he rode them all. All right. So, and he had all sorts of train stories, but he loved trains. So he came up on the train. I went and picked him up, brought him out, spent a couple of days. He said, "Could you write a column for me, a monthly column?" And I said, "Man, I'd love to." So I started writing columns for him, and our friendship just just grew. We were close. And then of course my dad died in 88, and Allan definitely became he was 10 years older than I was, so he wasn't old enough to be my dad, but he certainly became kind of a surrogate, whatever, wise counselor for me, when I lost my dad. And we just grew that. Finally that magazine started making money, and that thing, we grew it together. And um and then when he passed away 6 years ago, you know the they called me and asked me if I'd be the editor, and I just, I couldn't imagine it. I was completely speechless. And I called. I said, I got to talk to Teresa about this. So I called Teresa. I was out speaking in Colorado at a convention, and I called her. I said, how can I possibly do it? And in her great, you know, wifely loyalty and wisdom, she said, it'll be different, but it'll be okay. And because, yeah, how can you ever, Allan Nation, listen, Billy, Allan Nation had a photographic. You see this bookshelf behind me. So when he'd come up a couple times a year, spend several days with us, and I'd go out and do chores. He was not an outdoorsman. He was a writer, and I mean, he was allergic to grass, allergic to pollen, and so he wasn't outside a lot, but he sure read. And I'd go out to do chores. He'd go to this bookshelf, find a book he hadn't read, and he would read it while I was at chores. And when we had breakfast, then I'd come in, hour and a half later, and he had a photographic memory. He'd say, now on page 76, he says so and so. What do you think about that? On page 95, he says so and so. And he read just, it was unbelievable. He read a book a day.
Wow.
And that's what gave him such an eclectic, comprehensive view of life and the world, and things that just nobody else had. And man, I still miss him like crazy, because he had such a grasp of so many different kinds of things. And that encouraged me to read widely. So I read business and history and religion and economics and culture and literature and different things, because that's how you connect dots. That's how you get stuff hooked together. And so yeah, that was Allan Nation. He was bigger than life. And I'll never be done missing him. He was just that kind of guy.
Well, it was a joy, I know, to hear you tell stories about him. And I mean, about him listening to, like, train sounds would put me to sleep, where he would be on a road trip listening to trains. And I thought, I mean, but that's the beauty of people like Allan and yourself, is that, it's like Mark Twain said, it's difficult to get a charitable view of the world if you just vegetate in your spot your whole life.
Right.
And that's the beauty, circling right back to what you're offering at this thing, where you have people that are world renowned. I mean, Darren Doherty, I don't know if the guy's left Australia since this whole sweet and sour sniffles thing went down.
Well, he has. He's actually, for the last 18 months, he's been in, where is he? He's either in Vietnam or Cambodia or something, one of those Southeast Asian, maybe it's India actually. Anyway, it's over there, over there somewhere.
Over
And
there.
he's on a project planting 4 million mulberry trees. He sent me a picture. It's literally like 2 acres of nursery shade cloth covered little pots of little mulberry cuttings. 4 million trees that he's planting for food and fodder, for mainly for livestock there. But yeah, he's just an amazing guy. I got to tell you this story. So he did a bunch of uh, work for Nestle's in Vietnam, and after the Vietnam War. And so he's over there doing a bunch of tree planting and consulting and different things. And he says you go to a restaurant there, and the bathrooms, the toilet is an outhouse out over the river. and they've got these big fish in the river. And so when you do your business, number two, these catfish are circling there, and they're waiting for that. And he says they actually come up and they kiss your bottom,
What?
to grab your poop as it comes out. But this is the way it's done. Anyway, his stories. I mean, he's got more stories than you can even imagine. But yeah, he's done projects in what 46 different countries. So he's been in wet areas, dry areas, because Billy, a lot of times, I'm sure you've seen this. People will come and they'll say, "Well, you can do that there because whatever the climate's
Right.
like that, the terrain's like that, or the vegetation's like that. You can't do that here." Well, the beauty of these kind of people that are going to be here, especially Darren, is they've been all over the world. They've been in deserts, they've been in tropics, and so they can speak to literally any climate and any context that somebody can throw at them, and they then come. What's the common denominator? What's the common thing that needs to be done here? And so it's just a wealth of, and John Kemp. I mean, soils.
Yeah.
He has, every day he's checking soils from all over the U.S. Dry places, wet places, high places, low places, and so they have this tremendous eclectic wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, there's going to be a Rolodex. Like, I mean, the Rolodex and each mental Rolodex of each one of these people is extraordinary. And of course, Joel's going to be there as well, everybody. Look, I can't stress it enough, y'all. I've gone through, and like I said, for Darren alone, I said this to Joel when I saw him last. I was like, honestly, I just to see Darren Doherty alone and to have the opportunity to ask a few questions, I thought I would have paid at least twice what they're asking here, folks. You look, I know everything seems a little bit on edge right now. Things are weird. We got strange. I don't know because this is going to be on YouTube as well. I'm not sure to what extent I'm able to talk about certain things. But look, I know things seem like they're falling apart right now, and to a certain extent they might be, but the worst thing you can do at a time like this is to just stand there and think, okay, I'm not going to go out here. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to travel. I'm not going to do it. Look, I know people that have been doing that for the last 20 years, expecting for the other shoe to drop. And so they're
Right.
not making trips and they're waiting till the last minute before they go to an event like this or some of the other events that I've gone. Folks, if you have any interest of going, you might want to get it done for two reasons right now. Um, Other people are hearing this podcast right now. Like I said, we're number one for a reason. Number two, I don't know when you're ever going to see this again. I mean, this is like catching Haley's comet. You got what, 75 years?
Yeah.
I don't know when
Yeah.
the stars are ever going to align again. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually jealous of my wife.
Yeah, I'll guarantee you this group of people will never be on one platform again, uh, ever, I expect.
Probably, yeah.
I just can't imagine it. But, and partly it's been created because these are my heroes. These are my friends. And from my, travels and relationship cultivations, I leverage I leverage that relationship, to bring in this broad, this broad spectrum. And Allan Nation, I remember he would always tell me, he said, the best return on investment you'll ever get is information. He said, how many times in a book, will you see one $100 idea? One $100 idea. You pay 20, 30 bucks for a book. The normal book is going to have five $100 ideas. His point was, it has to be a terrible book, a terrible magazine, a terrible conference not to get a couple $100 ideas. And lots of times you'll get a couple $1,000 ideas. And so I think that's where we are on this one. I think I think the return on investment is going to be through the roof. And don't think that this is going to be over your head. I'm sure there's some people listening to this that don't have a farm. They want to, they have a dream to sometime. They want to get there. Well, you don't have to know anything. All you've got to have is a heart and a love for land healing, for earth stewardship, and this will feed your soul like nothing else. So it's a great time.
I want to be totally respectful for your time, and we'll circle back as far as the the particulars on this. But honestly, folks, it's because of what Joel just said there. Those books, his books, and a number of other books, because I'm a voracious reader. And like Joel said, it's not just things related to farming. There's historical things. I even sent Joel a book I talked about on this program a while ago regarding Civil War stuff. I try to build, I just have a natural interest for a lot of this stuff. But as far as finding these $1,000 ideas, that's exactly why I got to the position where I am, folks. That's why I was able to retire when I did. It was because of being able to get those books and then meet the people in those books. I mean, it's been a real joy to be able to do that in some areas, and then go out there to these seminars, spend some money. And it's the best money I ever spent, because honestly, I would be doing what I was doing before, where, yeah, you make what everybody thinks is good money, but it's not the work I love to do. And every single day, that's why it is the Pimpcast, y'all. Permaculture is my passion, and I'm able to make a pretty awesome living doing it. And I'm able to meet incredible people like Joel, and the number of the people that he's mentioned here. Man, it's really on my wish list. And if there's any possible way to be there, I am definitely going to be there. But for sure, Michelle is going to be there. So, Joel, one more time, August 22nd and 23rd. For the people that are coming in late or maybe watching this on YouTube, correct me if I'm wrong. It's Darren Doherty, Dan Kittredge, John Kemp, Ty Lopez, Michael Godfrey, and Kit Farrow. And that's another dude I really want to see. And of course, he's too modest to point it out, but the great Joel Salatin himself is going to be there, the Polyface Pimp Daddy himself, as I call him on this program. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I wasn't expecting to begin any conferences introducing himself that way, but he's been extraordinary. I guess he's been, to a certain extent, to me what Allan Nation was to him. And because of him, I've been able to achieve some things that were undreamed of in my life. So, Joel, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just thank you for the platform. Thank you for your leadership in this space, your ability to articulate what is on the heart of so many of us, and just appreciate you a lot, and always enjoy getting together and fellowshipping with you, and look forward to our next time together.
Well, all right. I couldn't have said it better myself, y'all. Good night. You got to go here. You got to get that Stockman Grass Farmer subscription. You're going to be glad you did. Until next time, stay alert, stay alive.